What does it mean when I ask you for a confidence interval? And even when people know this, they tend not to think it through. I hear people throw around phrases like 90% confident or this or that, the other. Like it's very common to hear someone reference something like this, but not really think through what it means. Okay, so sometimes we get asked questions we don't know much about. That probably happened during the calibration test. When that happens, a place our mind naturally goes is to say something like, I have no idea. Any of the phrases that are up on the screen, you might say, it's some version of, I can't answer that, I don't know anything about that. This is actually rarely the case. And when you look at confidence intervals, you are actually quantifying your own uncertainty. If we knew something exactly, it wouldn't be estimating. Remember that. It would be measuring. But even though you don't know it exactly, you can still estimate. I'm going to give an example from the book I referenced earlier, How to Measure Anything. So he asked the question, what's the wingspan of a 747? And a woman in the class said something like, I have no idea. And he said, you have no idea? She said, no, I have no idea. I don't know much about aviation. I'm not good at spatial stuff. And he's like, okay. Well, is it bigger than a football? And she was like, well, yeah, obviously it's bigger than a football. Okay, cool. Is it smaller than the Earth? She said, well, yeah, it's smaller than the Earth. Okay, well, how big is a football, do you think? Well, I mean, I don't know, like a foot and a half, something like that. I don't know, maybe like a foot. Okay. How big is the Earth? Oh, I don't know, it's really big, like thousands of miles. Okay, so we know it's bigger than a foot and smaller than thousands of miles. What about a mountain? Is a 747, the wingspan of a 747, as big as a mountain? Okay, no, it's not bigger than a mountain, smaller than a mountain. Okay, and doing this over time, he worked her down to a range. I don't remember what it was, maybe something like 50 to 700 feet or something, where there was this range that she was able to provide, even without being somebody who knew much about airplanes or was good at measuring distances, where she was able to say, here is my upper and lower bound. We tend not to think this way when we're asked for confidence or confidence intervals and these sorts of phrases are used. So, what is a confidence interval? Because that's what he was actually working this woman towards. Saying, I want to get your 90% confidence interval around the wingspan of a 747. If you were a Boeing engineer, maybe you'd have a very tight confidence interval here at 90%. But if you don't know anything about planes, like you're like this woman who doesn't know anything, maybe you'd have a much wider, but your confidence interval would still be 90%. So, let's say you're here in January, because this is a scenario we run into a lot in game and software development. You're asked for a 90% confidence interval for finishing feature X. This is what our brain does. Our intuition goes, okay, got it. There's a 90% chance it will finish before October and a 10% chance it'll finish after October. So I'm just going to say October is my 90% confidence. Now, let's ignore the fact that that's probably wrong, and we'll go into why more, but that idea that we're overconfident estimators generally, that's the big reason. And often, actually, whatever first thing comes into our mind becomes an anchor for us, which, again, we'll also talk about. This actually isn't a 90% confidence interval. So if you went to this place, it's okay. Many people do. It's incorrect. This is a 90% confidence interval. 90% confidence interval is asking for the middle 90% confidence of when something is likely to be done. To do this properly, we would say that there's a 5% chance that it would be done before your confidence interval and a 5% chance it would be done after your confidence interval, and then 90% in the middle. And you can ask for other confidence intervals as well. And so we could say, like, I want your 60% confidence interval. Okay, what's the 20% the time it will be done after this, 20% of the time it will be done before this? And you might say, look, I don't really know that. That's okay. We can actually we can use the information we do have to get a better handle on what we think this might be, even if we're not totally confident. A 60% confidence interval is only right 6 out of 10 times. So it's okay that it's wrong some of the time. And these confidence intervals are really about helping us understand our own uncertainty. It's not about having an exact answer or always getting this right. It's about understanding, man, how much uncertainty is there in this? By the way, really common thing that happens, just coming back to this slide for a second, is we're asked for a 90% confidence interval, and we actually give the answer of May. Even though if we thought through it, we might realize, oh my gosh, no, there's only like a 5% chance it will be done by May and 95% chance it will be done after. But our brains almost do this thing where we go, well, what's the earliest it could possibly be done? um, and this is wrong, this is incorrect, but we do it all the time. We do it in software development, game development. Some of that's because we're trying to give the right answer, but we often give the wrong end of the range, and this really causes a ton of problems. So here's what confidence intervals actually are. They're there to help us understand our own uncertainty. What this means is that whenever you get asked for an estimate, a useful thing to do is to go, what are the bounds, the upper and lower bounds? If you're asked how many people would that take? Well, what's the lower bound? What's the upper bound? How long will that take? Well, what's the earliest it might be done or the latest it might be done? Or do I think it's, what's the least amount of time or the most amount of time I think that might take? You may surprise yourself just by engaging the thought process of earliest to latest around a 90% confidence interval. And when you do this again, you often also realize that, shoot, I was going to give a fairly early estimate as if it was a late one, as if I was highly confident of it. By the way, just because you think in ranges doesn't mean the person that asked you for this or the system that asked you for this wants this in ranges. And so that's something else we have to talk about, because this is where you may still give the later or longer or bigger, whatever it is, answer end of the range to put into like a system of, I'm doing a road mapping exercise. Okay, cool. What's the confidence interval you want around that road mapping exercise? Because that should impact when you put the line. If you put everything down as a 50%, like, I think there's a 1 in 2 chance that this is done at this point, and that's what you put down, it means that half of your estimates are likely to be wrong. They're likely to be wrong the wrong way, and that's going to blow out your roadmap. So this is stuff to think about as you go through this. And again, it's okay if someone asks you something and you don't have to say, well, I'm going to give you an answer in a range. Just think about it in your own mind as a range. And again, it will be enlightening all by itself. But what if you don't know? What if it's really hard for you to tell what your 90% confidence interval? What if it's like, I can't seem to like puzzle through that, or I always give the wrong answer even when I try? Well, remember first, it's not always about having the right answer. It's about understanding your own uncertainty.